Hey guys, it's Lemon. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up and an overview of how I edit my photos. Now, I do all of my edits on Photoshop CS5 or Lightroom 2. I know Lightroom is super old, but I just wanted to give you a once-over of how I do it. So, number one, I'm just kind of going to give you a heads up of how I choose my pictures to edit. So I'm going to go through a few that I haven't chosen, and you can see how selective I am. So you'll see that this photo here, it's a decent quality, but there's a head over here, and I hate cropping after the fact. I do everything in my power to avoid it. You will also notice that it's not super clear. A better example of one that this is a maybe photo, a better example of one that I wouldn't touch at all with Photoshop is this one right here. Although it's an adorable photo and I love it, it's got so much grain. Oh, and I apologize for all of the background noise. My computer overheats really fast, really easily, and so you're gonna have a lot of fan stuff in there. Sorry. Anyways, so this is a great photo of Dormouse from the Mad Tea Party at Disney California Adventure, and you can see he's got his guitar pick in his mouth and he's looking absolutely ridiculous like normal. But there's a lot of smoke in there, it's a little bit dark. There's this little light there that's screwed off everything. So this is one that I probably wouldn't go anywhere near just because I know it'll be an editing nightmare, and I've already tried to work with it and it's not working. So sorry guys, you're not going to get an edit of this. Anyways, there's a few more. This one you'll be seeing soon, along with a decent halfway, I guess, version of this one. It's really small, and it's not the best in focus, but I don't mind it. And then this one you'll definitely be getting an edit of. And then, yeah, anyways. So, I wanted to show you an example of a photo that I would edit, which would be this one, or this is one that I also wouldn't edit. You can see that it's blurry and grainy, and this one's nice, but you can't see the face, dark, too much pink. Now, you'll often hear photographers say how much they hate the pink light. This is why. You can't get rid of it in photos. So there's a couple with the pink. That one's a little bit dark. That one's also dark. But this is the one that I'm going to show you. You can see it's a good shot of Alice up close. It's a decent shot of Dormouse and the March Hare in the back being silly. So let's get to it. Close those two windows, and by some miracle of Photoshop magic, I've already got it up. So you'll get to see how I edit. So I pretty much work in, nope, not that one, this one. I work in this editing frame, so I can't really see my background, which is really obnoxious. So I start off with this, and I almost always duplicate the background layer and set it to screen. Now you can see that made it really bright. What screen does is the screen basically doubles all of the lights. So I'm going to try my magic trick, which is setting one layer to screen and a layer below it to multiply. Now, multiply basically darkens all the colors, and screen basically brightens all of them. So if you see when I take the two layers off versus when they're on, there's a little bit more contrast, there's a little bit more brightness, and it's what I like to see in my photos. Now I'm gonna zoom in for a moment and see how bad the grain is. Okay, so you see how the grain is really bad there? I don't have as good of a way to edit this on my Photoshop. It's just not in the way that I edit in general. So I just kind of suck it up and deal with it and then fix it in Lightroom later. Anyways, so that's the number one step that I do with all of my photos, is I always do this multiply and then this screen layer. It's a guaranteed, I always do it. Okay, so once I've done that, I usually go into here, and I like to play with the curves. So with the curves, you can go with the defaults, which are dreadful. You can make the colors negative, you can darken it, which actually that's not bad, but it makes her face a little bit orange. You can increase the contrast, which that increases it too much, lighter, etc., etc. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I am actually going to keep the linear contrast, because if you look at the difference between that one and the previous version, it's just a slight change, but it's enough to be useful. Okay, so I've done my contrasty bits. Usually I go in and hand do that, so I'm going to just kind of show you how that works. The way that curves works is you have your histogram in the back, and then you've got these points on here that you can play with. And there's an input and an output, etc., etc. So it's basically just like a graph. So you can see that your input would be on the x-axis, and your output is on the y-axis. So you can kind of play with it all over and see how much it changes things. So I like that a little bit, and then, so that's going to lower the contrast and just brighten it, and then that's going to increase it to the way too much status. So I might just drop that just a hair to there. So you can see that I actually did change it, and I prefer this a little bit more for my style. Okay, so now for coloring. Number one, I use a Photoshop only coloring technique in general, which is known as Selective Colour. It's right here under the fill and adjustment layers, and so you go into there, slide your mouse all the way down and go to Selective Colour. Now Selective Colour allows you to play with each of the colors individually. So you see you've got your reds, your yellows, your greens, your cyans, your blues, your magentas, whites, neutrals, and blacks. Number one, I always go to neutrals, and I usually bump up the blacks a little bit, so if you go all the way, you can see what's going on, and you go all the way the other direction, you see that it goes the other way. It's another way of bringing up the contrast that I use it for. So I'm going to bring it up just a hair to 18. From there, I don't like to mess with any of the colors. If you go into the cyans, you can make it all red or blue, or go back to 0. Yellows can make it more blue or yellow. Actually, I might bump up the yellow so it's got a little bit of a warmer tone. My photos are generally a little bit more warm than cool. From there, I go into blacks, and you can see what happens if you take the blacks in the complete negative direction. You get this weird white area on her leg. I'm going to go in the opposite direction and darken it just a hair to about 8. Going from between 8 and 100 is not a huge change, which is really strange. Anyways, then I go into whites and play with this one. And if anything, I actually usually darken the whites a little bit, just because it's a little bit easier to play with. And then you have a little bit more of a flat skin tone, some of the detail comes out in other places. Other thing in the whites that I sometimes do is I sometimes make it cooler or warmer. On this one I'm going to actually have to cool it down a little bit because of her skin is really orange, and I don't want that to interfere. Okay, so we've done our whites, our neutrals, and our blacks. So now I'm going to go hands off on all of those and head up to my reds. So first thing that I always do whenever I'm starting with a new color is I always start with the blacks to see where I'm going to be playing with. And so the blacks kind of let you see where you're going to be having your edits. So I just go completely all the way light, all the way dark, back and forth a few times so that I can see where I'm going to be fixing things. So I can see one problem right now. I'm going to need to drop it down to get her face and bump it up to get the red of the guitar to where I want it to. So right now I'm going to edit it based off of her face, because it's going to be a little bit easier for me. So I drop it down. From there I go into my yellows, and I do very like coarse adjustments and just slide it haphazardly around until I kind of settle on something I like. I very rarely play with the magentas because magentas are really easy to go awry on, especially in the reds channel. In this one I'm actually moving it way more than normal just because her face has a lot of that dark red and orange in there. And then if you can see, there's not a whole lot of blues. The blue edit is going on the palm of her hand, and I'm just going to try to make it look normal, so I'm just going to kind of slide it up just a hair. Okay, so yellows. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot of yellows, but again, start with a black, see where anything's changing, and I'm not seeing anything, which means to me there are no edits to be done on that layer. So then I go into the greens. And greens there we go. Greens are mostly in March Hare's hair. There's not a whole lot in his jacket, as you'll notice. Most of his jacket is in the aquas and in the cyans. So I usually just kind of play with it. Again, I play with it really coarse adjustments, but there's not much to do in there. So going back into the cyans, you can see that's where the edits are coming in his jacket. Since he's already a little bit washed out, I'm going to bring that up. I'm going to play with the yellows. I like to make his jacket a little bit greener because when I think of it in real life, I think of it as green. So I try to edit to life, not to the photo. And then sometimes I bring down the cyan and bump up the magenta. So, another heads up on how selective color works. Cyans go between red and cyan, magentas go between magenta and green, and yellows control yellow and blue. So that's how that works. So we go into your blues. Blues control a lot of the darkness, so I'm gonna bump the blacks all the way up, just because I want to darken the background to make her stand out. So again, playing with this, you can see it goes purple to blue. I kind of like how the purple looks, personally. Again, it's all based on your personal preference. I try to do whatever is going to make the focus stand out the most. Again, haphazard adjustments at first, and then settling down. So here we can also see that it's really affecting her skirt. So I'm going to raise it just a bit to get it back to blues, and I might actually tone down my blacks to get her skirt back to normal. And then the cyans, you see, it goes to red and to dark blue, red and dark blue. And I'm going to bring that one all the way up to get her skirt to normal. Last one is magentas, and magentas you have to be really careful with. Again, magentas are in her hair, there's some magentas in the base, and lots of magentas that are in the skin. That's something to keep in mind. So you go, again, playing with it. I try to get the background to be as flat as possible, because I don't exactly want to see it. It's background, it's supposed to kind of fade away. Okay, so we've done that one. I'm going to zoom in again, see how it looks. So there's still a lot of grain, but I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm going to zoom back out, and let me just kind of show you what it looks like without any of the edits. That's the original, and that's the final. Big difference. So there's that. So now I'm going to save it onto my desktop, and I save it as a JPEG just because it's easy, and then leave it as that file name because I'm going to import it into Lightroom to get rid of some of the green. So it's thinking. I always leave it as image quality 12. I can always drop it later using a Mac program called Preview, and it allows me to drop the quality to it allows you to drop the quality at a later time to internet resolution, which is 72 dpi, dpi being dots per inch, if I remember correctly. But the other thing is that Lightroom does that automatically as I export. So that's one less thing to have to worry about. So now I see that's what it's going to look like on a full solid black background, and then I hide Photoshop so I don't have to look at it. So from here I go into Lightroom, which you can see takes a moment to open. Sorry, I forgot to open this before. So we're going to sit here for a moment and let it open. Try to think of any fun little Photoshop. Oh, that's what I meant to say, was if you go onto Adobe's webpage, you can download Adobe Photoshop CS2. I'll try to include the link down below. Yeah, you can kind of see some of the ones that I've played around with. Yeah, I'm not exactly happy with this face here. It's a little bit more. So this is this, and it's thinking, there we go. Yeah, lots of fun Mad Tea Party pictures. So I'm going to import this picture into my library by dragging and dropping, import it. Here. Okay, so we have our photo. Eventually I'm going to be going into the detail area. Now in the detail area you can adjust different types of ridding picture of noise. I'm going to be playing with the chromatic aberrations, chromatic being color, and the luminosity aberrations. So you can see I'm going to zoom out. It looks a-okay, but when you zoom in there's a lot of this noise in the background. So again, let's see what happens if I go all the way up on luminance. Luminance is light. So, I would have expected that to do. Ah, there we go. Okay, so you can see the difference. It's really, really clear spots versus not so clear spots. What happens if we go to the color? You can see that it helps a little bit. So that's what's going to happen with the background. Let's see what's going on with her face. So, again, the face is the most important thing because it should be the focus of your picture. It's not bad. You can see as I scroll that it comes back way up. It makes her skin actually look pretty halfway. I'm willing to sacrifice that. Okay, so you can see there was some really bad noise on her leg. There was some really bad in the background, and then there was also some really bad on her face. So, noise is done. Now I'm going to go back into the library and export it, and then I will upload it so you all can see it. So I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial.